Amira Holloway had carved out an existence amidst the desolate landscape that sprawled like a forgotten memory on the edge of nowhere. The vast, rolling hills were her world, a patchwork of sun-bleached grass and stubborn wildflowers defying the harsh elements. She rose with the dawn, her breath mingling with that of the gentle cattle she tended, their quiet mooing a comforting soundtrack to her solitary life. Each day was a testament to her resilience as she worked diligently, raising her young son with all the love she could muster, teaching him the values of hard work and respect for the land that had provided them refuge. Fleeing from the violence that had once engulfed her life during the war, Amira had sought solace in the remoteness of her ranch. It was here she had hoped to rebuild, to cultivate not just crops and livestock, but a sense of safety and normalcy for her child. The evenings brought a serene stillness, broken only by the crackling of the fire and the laughter of her boy as they shared stories under the sprawling stars. Yet beneath this veneer of peace lay an ever-looming threat, a reminder that nothing was ever truly certain. The calm was shattered when a group claiming to be federal reclaimers rode into her life one fateful afternoon, their intentions as menacing as their presence suggested. They demanded her land deeds with a confidence that sent chills down her spine. Amira's heart raced not out of fear but defiance. She refused to yield ground she had fought so hard to claim. Their angry response came swiftly and brutally. Her home was engulfed in flames, her livestock fell lifeless under their fire, and most terrifying of all, they took her son. Left for dead among the ashes of her former life, it seemed all hope was lost. But fate intervened when two unlikely saviors emerged from the shadows, an elderly Apache tracker and a former Confederate surgeon hiding out in the rugged hills. They saw in Amira not just a mother broken by tragedy, but a spirit waiting to be kindled. Under their guidance, she began an arduous journey of transformation, a metamorphosis from a passive survivor into a fierce warrior ready to reclaim everything that had been taken from her. The sun hung low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the rugged land, when the tension began to weave itself into the air like an ominous storm. Amira had sensed something was amiss even before she saw them, shadows on horseback appearing in the distance, their silhouettes stark against the backdrop of her quiet life. The arrival of the rogue posse claiming to be federal reclaimers felt like a harbinger of doom, their horses kicking up dust that settled over her heart like a shroud. As they drew closer, Amira could see their faces, hardened and unsympathetic. The leader, a tall man with a scar running down his cheek, dismounted with an air of authority that sent a chill through her. He approached her with an unsettling confidence that spoke of entitlement. "You know why we're here," he said, his voice cold and commanding. "We need those land deeds, hand them over and we'll leave you be." Amira's heart raced as she stood her ground, defiance igniting within her. This land was not just soil and grass, it was the sanctuary where she had fought to build a new life for herself and her son. "This is my home," she replied steadily, though fear laced her words. "I will not sign anything." The posse exchanged glances, their expressions shifting from surprise to contempt as they realized how fierce this woman could be. In a swift movement that felt like a bolt of lightning striking her world, they unleashed their fury. Her home that had shielded her from violence became engulfed in flames as they laughed at the destruction unfolding before them. The sound of gunfire echoed through the valley as they shot her livestock without hesitation, leaving lifeless bodies sprawled on the ground. Panic surged within Amira as she searched for her son amidst the chaos, only to witness him being dragged away by one of the men, an act so cruel it cut deeper than any blade could have. As darkness enveloped her home in more ways than one, Amira collapsed among the wreckage, left for dead but ignited by a flicker of resolve. This was not how her story would end. The echoes of laughter morphed into a distant memory as fate intervened with unexpected allies waiting just beyond the hills. In the face of impending doom, Amira's defiance stood as a bulwark against the malevolent posse encroaching on her life. As the men dismounted, their confidence was palpable, weaving an air of intimidation that could have easily drowned anyone else in fear. But not Amira. With her heart racing, she felt a surge of courage welling up within, a fierce determination fueled by the memories of her son and the dreams she had worked so hard to build. The leader stepped closer, his voice laced with disdain as he delivered his threat. "We need those land deeds, woman. Sign them over or things will get ugly." The promise of violence hung in the air like a heavy fog but did little to shake her resolve. Amira looked him squarely in the eye, a flame igniting behind her gaze. "This is my land," she declared, her voice steady despite the churning fear inside her. "You'll never take it from me." The posse exchanged incredulous glances, momentarily taken aback by her unyielding stance. It was a fleeting moment of hesitation, one that would quickly turn into their brutal reaction. They unleashed chaos, her home succumbed to flames, and the acrid smell of smoke filled the air, mingling with the sight of her livestock falling lifeless at their hands. Each crackle of gunfire pierced Amira's heart, yet even as terror gripped her, she refused to cry out or plead for mercy. Instead, she latched onto her daughter's last well-worn words, "Never let them take your voice away." And so she remained silent but resolute, refusing to be broken under the weight of their cruelty. As the flames consumed her sanctuary, it became clear that this fight was not only for her land but also for every shred of dignity that they sought to strip away. Panic gripped her as she searched frantically for her son amidst the chaos. Voices rang out, and soon she caught sight of him being dragged away. In that instant of overwhelming despair, the flicker of defiance transformed into raging fury as dark thoughts permeated her reality. Just as they believed they had crushed her spirit, Amira remained steadfast in one essential belief: she would not allow this to be the end of her story. Their laughter faded into the night as her will ignited. Something deep within awakened, whispering that true strength lies not in purpose alone but in the courage to fight back when all seems lost. The moment of defiance was swiftly eclipsed by chaos as the posse, frustrated by Amira's refusal, erupted in a flurry of violence. The leader's command shattered the stillness. With menacing shouts, they unleashed their brutality upon her world. In an instant, their wrath turned her quiet sanctuary into a scene of unimaginable horror. Flames roared to life, licking greedily at the wooden frame of her home, transforming it into an inferno that glowed ominously against the twilight sky. The acrid scent of smoke enveloped her, stinging her eyes and tightening her throat. Amira staggered backward, helplessly watching as the flames devoured the walls that once sheltered warmth and laughter. Each crackle of burning wood felt like a heartache echoing through her very soul. In parallel fury, gunshots erupted around her, each blast sealing the fate of her beloved cattle. She could only stand there in disbelief as their anguished cries pierced the air, intermingling with her own rising panic. Her livestock, her companions in solitude and labor, were cut down mercilessly, their lives extinguished in an act of senseless cruelty. Amira's heart raced not just from fear but from an engulfing sorrow that threatened to consume her. Amidst the pandemonium, her gaze darted frantically for her son. A rush of adrenaline propelled her forward, compelling her to push through the chaos in search of him, her voice clinging to hope amidst despair. It was then she saw them, the brutes dragging him away while he kicked and screamed for his mother. "No," she cried out, but it was swallowed by the tumultuous sounds of destruction surrounding her. The sight wound tighter around her chest than any steel trap, freezing her in place as despair wrestled against her willpower. In that harrowing moment, all sense of what could have been collapsed under the weight of what was unfolding before her eyes. Left amidst the ruins of everything she had fought to create, Amira felt herself descend into a pit of desperation. What had begun as a fight for survival was now a dark descent into helplessness, a stark contrast to the fierce resolve that had surged just moments before. Yet as she succumbed to despair, a flicker of a different feeling began to glow within, the relentless ember of anger igniting further with each horrific act inflicted by the posse. This anger would become pivotal. This would not be merely an attack. This was the beginning of a reckoning in which they would learn Amira Holloway was not yet done fighting. Amira lay amidst the charred remains of her life, her body battered and spirit nearly extinguished. The acrid scent of smoke still clung to the air, a haunting reminder of the horrors she had just endured. In that desolate moment, surrounded by ashes and despair, she felt utterly alone, the weight of her loss pressing down heavily upon her. Just as darkness threatened to swallow her whole, fate intervened in the form of two unexpected figures emerging from the hills. An elderly Apache tracker, his weathered face marked by years of wisdom and experience, approached with a quiet grace. His deep-set eyes, sharp and perceptive, scanned the devastation around them before settling on Amira. Beside him stood a former Confederate surgeon, whose presence was equally imposing yet softened by a gentleness that belied his past. They had been hiding out in the rugged terrain, their paths converging at this tragic moment, drawn by the distant sounds of chaos. "Hold on," the tracker said softly, his voice steady and reassuring. "You're not alone anymore." With careful hands, he helped Amira to her feet, offering her a support she desperately needed. The surgeon examined her wounds, a look of grim determination crossing his features as he tended to her injuries with practiced precision. In that moment of vulnerability, something within Amira began to shift. Their presence sparked a flicker of hope where despair had taken root. As they spoke to her about resilience and survival, Amira listened intently, absorbing their lessons like a parched land soaking in rain. They shared stories of their own battles, of loss and redemption, and offered insight into the skills she would need to reclaim her life. Under their guidance, Amira found herself slowly awakening from her stupor of grief. The elderly tracker taught her the art of tracking and patience, while the surgeon instilled in her the knowledge of self-defense and healing. Each lesson was a building block in the foundation of a new life she never intended to forge but now embraced with fervor. As days turned into weeks, Amira transformed from a woman crushed by tragedy into one steeled for battle. With each passing sunset, she honed her skills with a sharpshooter's rifle, feeling power surge through her veins. The fire within her reignited, fueled not only by vengeance but by an unyielding will to protect what remained of her world. She was no longer just a victim. She was becoming a force to be reckoned with, a warrior poised to reclaim her life and confront those who had wronged her. Under the tutelage of her unexpected mentors, Amira began to transform in ways she had never anticipated. The elderly Apache tracker, wise and patient, guided her through the rugged terrain that surrounded their hideout. Each day was a lesson in survival, how to navigate the land, identify tracks, and read the whispers of nature that revealed secrets about the world around her. His teachings instilled in her a newfound awareness, sharpening her instincts as she learned to blend into the environment like a shadow. Meanwhile, the former Confederate surgeon shared his knowledge of self-defense and combat techniques, weaving practical skills into Amira's daily routine. With each training session, he taught her not only how to wield a weapon, but also how to harness her fear and channel it into purpose. They practiced for hours. She aimed at targets carved from wood and practiced quick reflexes that would one day serve her well against her enemies. Despite the pain in her arms and the fatigue that threatened to overwhelm her, Amira found strength in every drop of sweat. With each pull of the trigger, she felt empowerment replace despair. It was as if each shot echoed with a promise of vengeance, justice, and protection for what remained of her life. The rifle soon became an extension of herself rather than just a tool for violence. The bond with her mentors deepened as they shared stories under the stars after long days of training. The tracker recounted tales of bravery from his youth, while the surgeon spoke candidly about loss and redemption. Amira listened intently, understanding that the journey ahead was not just one of physical confrontation, but also one of reconciling with her past. As weeks rolled on and seasons changed around them, Amira's transformation became evident, not just in her physical prowess but in her very spirit. She was no longer the timid woman shaken by grief, but rather a fierce warrior shaped by adversity. When she looked in the mirror reflecting off a still pond, she barely recognized the resolute figure staring back, strong, capable, ready to reclaim everything that had been taken from her. With resolve boiling under her skin like molten fire, Amira prepared herself for what lay ahead. She was done being a victim. Soon enough, she would ride out with purpose, to find those who wronged her family and ensure they understood that Amira Holloway would no longer be underestimated or silenced. Each sunrise marked not just another day, but another step closer to reclaiming her destiny. As the days slipped into weeks, Amira Holloway's transformation began to solidify with each crack of the rifle that echoed through the hills. Under the patient guidance of her mentors, she honed her skills with a sharpshooter's rifle, learning not just to shoot, but to see through the eyes of a hunter. With every target she struck, an unfamiliar sense of power coursed through her veins, washing away remnants of her former self. The timid woman who had once felt crushed by despair was evolving into a formidable force. She embraced her training with fierce determination, focusing on each lesson as a step toward reclaiming her identity. The anger that had initially sparked in her heart transformed into focused resolve, propelling her forward like a powerful current. With every aim and pull of the trigger, Amira found herself shedding layers of vulnerability and fear. She was no longer merely reacting to the trauma. She was preparing to act, to confront her enemies with unyielding ferocity. Evenings were spent practicing under the light of the stars, the cool night air sharpening her senses as she dialed in on distant targets. Her accuracy improved with each session, and soon she found herself hitting bullseyes with remarkable ease. The rifle became an extension of her will, the cold metal now warmed by her determination. Each shot signified not just newfound skill but a definitive step away from being a victim and toward becoming a vigilante ready for reckoning. With this mastery came a shift in how Amira perceived the world around her. The dark memories of loss were still present, but they no longer held dominion over her spirit. Instead, they fueled a fire within that transformed pain into purpose. She reveled in the silence after a successful practice session. It was not just quiet, it was empowerment echoing in solitude. In one particularly poignant moment, she gazed into the reflection of a nearby pond after completing an intense training routine and barely recognized herself. No longer did fear flicker behind her eyes, they burned brightly with resolve and focus. This woman, this warrior, was ready to face whatever storm lay ahead. Fueled by both vengeance and justice for what had been stolen from her, Amira's heart thudded rhythmically in time with her growing purpose. She envisioned herself tracking down those who had shattered her life, feeling a surge of adrenaline at the thought of confronting them when they least expected it. They had underestimated her before. Soon enough they would learn that Amira Holloway was no longer hiding in fear, she was poised to strike back. With her newfound skills honed to razor-sharp precision, Amira Holloway embarked on a calculated mission to track down each member of the rogue posse that had shattered her life. This was not a mindless hunt. It was a methodical pursuit fueled by purpose, anger, and relentless determination. Armed with her sharpshooter's rifle and the wisdom imparted by her mentors, she set out into the wilderness that had once felt so isolating but now seemed like an expansive theater for her reckoning. Each step forward required strategy and cunning. Amira studied the land and utilized her knowledge of tracking. Elements of nature became her allies. She learned to recognize the subtle disturbances in the earth, the telltale signs of a campfire flickering in the distance, or the footprints left in the dust that revealed where the outlaws roamed. Her senses sharpened with every passing day, and she found herself slipping seamlessly into the role of a hunter, embodying both patience and stealth. The first target was a brute named Jeb, whose laughter still echoed in her mind from that fateful day when they had torn apart her world. She discovered he frequented a dingy saloon at the edge of town, where he boasted about his exploits to anyone who would listen. Disguised in a long coat and wide-brimmed hat, Amira blended into the shadows of the saloon as she watched him from afar, calculating her move with the precision she had learned. As he staggered out into the dark alleyway later that night, oblivious to the danger lurking nearby, Amira struck with practiced finesse. The rifle felt weightless in her hands as she raised it to aim, a steady breath as she focused on his silhouette, and then came the shot. It echoed like thunder in her ears but was quickly swallowed by the stillness of night. The first kill marked more than just vengeance. It solidified her resolve and underscored her transformation from victim to avenger. With each member of the posse she tracked down, each one met with similar deftness. Amira understood that this was not merely about retribution. It was about reclaiming control over her life. Each confrontation served as a reminder of how far she had come from that place of despair. Amira was no longer just wandering through life. She was an unstoppable force with an unquenchable fire burning within. As she moved deeper into enemy territory, her name began to echo among those who once thought of her as an easy target. They whispered fears of the woman who hunts. And so, one by one, each outlaw would learn that underestimating Amira Holloway would be their gravest mistake. As Amira continued her calculated quest for vengeance, whispers of her exploits began to ripple through the saloons and outlaw hideouts scattered across the unforgiving landscape. Tales of the woman who hunted down the men who had wronged her spread like wildfire, turning her from an ordinary rancher into a feared legend. Those who heard the rumors spoke of her uncanny marksmanship and the fierce intensity in her eyes, a stark contrast to the vulnerable woman who had once stood helpless and broken. In dark corners of smoke-filled taverns, hardened outlaws exchanged nervous glances whenever her name was mentioned. "Have you heard about Amira Holloway?" one would say, his voice low to avoid drawing attention. "She's taking them down one by one," another would add, fear creeping into their tone. The stories grew with each telling. Some claimed she was a ghost in the night, others that she was possessed by the spirits of all those who had suffered under tyranny. Her reputation caught even the attention of those who momentarily considered themselves safe. Members of the posse now found themselves looking over their shoulders, haunted by the realization that they were no longer hunting prey but being hunted themselves. Amira's transformation had become their nightmare as they realized just how deeply they had underestimated her. Meanwhile, with every outlaw she took down, Amira felt a surge of purpose ignite within her, fueling not only her quest for justice but also a legacy that would outlive her. Each victory in the shadows whispered back to her of resilience, echoing themes of empowerment she never thought possible. No longer did she see herself simply avenging her past. She was also laying claim to what it meant to be fiercely alive in a world that had tried to extinguish her light. The final member of the posse she sought was none other than his scarred leader, the man who had orchestrated the destruction of her life. Word reached her ears that he was holed up in a notorious hideout deep in the hills, surrounded by his remaining allies. But Amira was no longer filled with trepidation. Instead, an unshakable confidence emboldened her spirit. As she approached this den of darkness, a smile ghosted across her lips. Each step resonated with purpose, reminding her of how far she had come and how precious her purpose had become. She was not only hunting for justice, but carving out a place for herself in history, a living testament that few could withstand the relentless fire and spirit of a woman transformed. And as legends often do, hers began to take shape far beyond mere whispers. Soon enough, they would remember Amira Holloway not just as a woman scorned, but as a reckoning they would never forget. As Amira Holloway stalked her final target, the leader of the posse, a palpable tension filled the air, a phenomenon that thrummed like the taut string of a bowstring ready to snap. Unbeknownst to him, the very woman he had thought dead was hunting him down with the meticulous precision of a predator closing in on prey. He had lived in ignorance for too long, believing rumors of her demise while she meticulously plotted his reckoning. In a dimly lit tavern, he and what remained of his men celebrated their exploits, unaware that Amira's reputation as the woman who hunts had spread like wildfire among their ranks. Nervous glances shifted around the table, and laughter rang hollow as they recounted tales of their brutality, unaware that those stories would soon become tales of their downfall. As Amira approached their camp beneath the cover of night, every sense heightened. The sounds of crackling fire and raucous laughter filled her ears while shadows danced under the moonlight. Concealed in darkness, she took a moment to steady her breath, feeling the familiar weight of her rifle resting against her shoulder, an extension of herself forged in fire and fury. With practiced calmness, she surveyed the scene. The leader, a towering figure with striking scars etched across his face, was relishing a moment he believed belonged solely to him. Amira felt an ache deep within her for everything he had taken from her, her son, her peace, her home. But beyond that ache lay unyielding resolve. She was no longer merely driven by vengeance, but by a purpose that transcended personal loss: justice. She crept closer, blending into the shadows like one of the ghosts from their stories. Only this time it was not fear that would fill their hearts but unrelenting dread. As she positioned herself against a tree trunk, poised for action, memories of her training flooded back, the lessons learned from her mentors about timing and precision. The confrontation loomed ahead as she calculated her next move. The moon illuminated the clearing just enough for Amira to catch sight of another outlaw casually leaning against a barrel nearby. He would be dealt with first, then she would have her moment with the man who thought himself untouchable. In an instant, she steadied her aim and squeezed the trigger. The crack echoed through the night. Time seemed to slow as every eye in the camp turned towards where her shot had landed. Chaos erupted as panic set in among them. They scrambled for weapons but were met instead with precision strikes from Amira's capable hands. And just as swiftly as it began, their confident bravado vanished into thin air as realization dawned upon them: they were being hunted. The leader's laughter died in his throat as he scanned the perimeter desperately. He finally understood that he was no longer in control. As Amira readied herself for their inevitable showdown, she felt a cold clarity settle over her. This encounter would end not just with survival but with retribution. It was time for him to pay for everything he had done. The final confrontation was here at last, no longer just about survival, but about reclaiming not only justice, but also her rightful place in this world. As Amira Holloway prepared for the final confrontation with the leader of the posse, she found herself reflecting on the profound distinction between revenge and reckoning that had grown clearer throughout her journey. While revenge often stemmed from a place of bitterness and a desire to inflict pain in return for suffering, Amira's mission had evolved into something more meaningful, a quest for justice that sought to right the wrongs inflicted upon her life and reclaim her sense of agency. She understood that each outlaw she hunted was not merely a target for vengeance, but a symbol of the oppressive forces that had sought to strip her of everything she held dear. In taking them down one by one, Amira was not acting out of rage alone, she was asserting her existence in a world that had once aimed to silence her. Her actions were fueled by an unquenchable fire, ignited by loss but directed toward a greater purpose. As she neared their hideout, memories flooded her mind. The warmth of her son's laughter, the peaceful moments tending to her cattle, and the desperate chaos of that fateful day when everything changed. These recollections were bittersweet yet essential. They anchored her resolve and transformed what could have been mere revenge into a reckoning, an act of reclaiming not only justice for herself, but also honor for those who were unable to defend themselves. When Amira faced the leader at last, there was no blind fury driving her forward. Instead, there was clarity. She stood before him not just as a woman wronged, but as a force embodying resilience and strength. Each breath she took echoed with purpose as she confronted him, not merely as an enemy, but as a representation of every injustice faced not only by herself, but by countless others who had suffered in silence. "Do you remember me?" she asked coldly, watching his eyes widen in disbelief. He stammered at first, confusion etching across his features, but there was no mistaking the rising fear as realization dawned on him. Amira Holloway was alive and standing strong before him. In that moment it became clear, the difference between revenge and reckoning lay in intention. As Amira steadied her aim, she understood that this wasn't just about punishing him. It was about restoring balance to her life and ensuring that he would never have the chance to harm anyone else again. With each pull of the trigger, she would carve out justice, not from hatred or spite, but from a place of empowerment and healing. The reckoning was here at last, promising closure for her haunted past while laying groundwork for a future where such tyranny would no longer prevail. This final confrontation marked not merely an end but also the beginning of a new chapter, one forged through courage, resilience, and unwavering strength. As Amira Holloway stood victorious after confronting the leader of the posse, she reflected on her remarkable journey from a quiet existence to becoming a powerful avenger. The path she had traveled was fraught with violence and despair, yet it had ultimately led her to reclaim not just her son, but also her agency in a world that sought to silence her. Each hardship endured had forged her into a fierce warrior, and each outlaw taken down was a step toward restoring balance to her life. In the aftermath of their confrontation, Amira felt a profound sense of liberation wash over her. The weight of trauma that had once threatened to engulf her was replaced by an unwavering strength, a testament to her resilience. She no longer viewed herself as a victim defined by loss. Instead, she saw a woman empowered by purpose, ready to pave a new path for herself and those she loved. As she made her way back home, thoughts of her son filled her heart with warmth. The longing for his laughter and the safe haven they once shared ignited hope within her. This journey had not only been about vengeance, it was about building a future where fear would no longer dictate their lives. Amira envisioned a place where they could heal together, free from the shadows of the past. Her reputation as the woman who hunts would echo in saloons and outlaw hideouts for years to come, whispered in awe by those who marveled at her tenacity and skill. But beyond the legend that was being crafted around her name lay the truth of her journey, a narrative woven with threads of courage, determination, and an unshakable will to protect what mattered most. Amira understood that this was not merely an end but the beginning of something greater, an opportunity to reclaim not just her son but also the very essence of who she was. In confronting those who had wronged her, she had reclaimed the right to define herself on her own terms. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting golden hues across the land she loved, Amira felt at peace for the first time in years. The battles fought were not just against physical foes, but against the internal demons that had sought to keep her subdued. Now, standing tall with newfound clarity and purpose, Amira Holloway was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead, a powerful avenger transformed into a symbol of resilience and justice in a world still fraught with violence.